Manna and Quail, Exodus 16. Welcome to Bible Story Time. Today we're diving into a remarkable story from the wilderness, a story of God's provision. The Israelites, fresh from their miraculous escape from Egypt, find themselves hungry and desperate in the desert. Let's explore how God provided for them in a way that would leave them with a deep understanding of His faithfulness. Stay with us till the end to discover the lesson behind God's miraculous provision. The Israelites' complaint. The Israelites had been traveling through the wilderness for a while, and soon their food supplies ran out. In their hunger, they began to complain against Moses and Aaron, saying, "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted, but you have brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death." At first glance, it seems like a harsh complaint. After all, the Israelites had just witnessed God's incredible miracles during the Exodus, but now they doubted His provision in the desert. Their trust in God was wavering because they couldn't see how their needs would be met. God's response to the complaints. Despite the Israelites' complaints, God responded with grace and compassion. He knew their needs and would not abandon them in their time of hunger. God told Moses, "I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day." God's promise was clear. He would provide for them, and they were to trust Him each day. In addition to the bread, God also promised to send quail in the evening, giving the Israelites meat to eat. This was a demonstration of God's ability to provide beyond their basic needs. The manna from heaven. The next morning, when the Israelites woke up, they were amazed to find a fine, flaky substance on the ground, which they had never seen before. They asked one another, "What is it?" Moses explained that this was the bread God had provided for them, and it was called manna, which means, "What is it?" Each person was to gather an omer of manna, enough for each day. The manna was a gift from God. Its purpose was to teach the Israelites to rely on Him daily. The Israelites could not store the manna for the next day except on the sixth day, when they were instructed to gather twice as much so they could rest on the Sabbath. The manna tasted like wafers made with honey, and it was a visible sign of God's care for His people. They ate it for the next 40 years, as it would sustain them until they entered the promised land. The quail in the evening. In the evening, God sent quail to cover the camp, giving the Israelites meat to eat. They were able to gather as much as they wanted, and God satisfied their hunger. Even though God had provided everything they needed, there was still a test of faith. Some Israelites tried to gather more manna than they needed for the day, hoping to store it for the next day. But the manna spoiled overnight and became rotten, teaching the people that they were to trust God for their daily provision. The importance of the Sabbath. On the sixth day, God instructed the Israelites to gather twice the amount of manna, as they would not gather any on the seventh day. This was a crucial lesson about trusting in God, not only for daily provision, but also for rest. And honoring the Sabbath, God had already set the pattern for the Israelites to work for 6 days and rest on the seventh. The Israelites' obedience to God's command would become a fundamental part of their relationship with Him. They had to trust that God would provide for them each day, and He would not fail them. Lessons from Manna and Quail. God provides for our needs. Just as God provided manna and quail to sustain the Israelites, He promises to meet our needs according to His riches in glory. He is a provider, and we can trust Him to meet our daily needs. Trust God daily. The Israelites were instructed to gather only enough manna for one day. This was a lesson in daily dependence on God. We are called to trust God every day for our needs, knowing that He is faithful. Obedience brings blessings. The Israelites learned that their obedience to God's commands was essential for receiving His blessings. When they obeyed, they were provided for abundantly. When they didn't, they faced difficulties. Rest is part of God's provision. God commanded the Israelites to rest on the seventh day. This was a reminder that rest is just as important as work in God's eyes. Taking time to rest and recharge is part of God's plan for our well-being. The story of Manna and Quail teaches us that God's provision is not just for our physical needs but also for our spiritual journey. He calls us to trust Him every day and rely on His goodness. If this story has encouraged you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Bible Story Time. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll uncover the story of the 12 spies sent into Canaan. A powerful lesson about trusting God's provision and His perfect plan.